Welcome to Monster Among Us, where we explore some of the most shocking and perplexing cases in the world of true crime. As authorities search for answers, they would zero in on Jonna Henningsson, a young woman with a love for horses and a bright future ahead of her. But as we uncover more about Jonna's personality and relationships, we start to wonder if she could be capable of such a heinous act. Join us as we unravel the mystery behind Lovisa's murder and the potential involvement of Jonna Henningsson. We will start this case with Jonna Henningsson, born in 1989. Jonna had a deep love for horses that consumed her from a young age. She spent much of her childhood in a small, isolated town in Sweden, where her outgoing and slightly childish personality earned her many friends. Despite her playful demeanor, Jonna was academically gifted and was destined for great things. In the mid-2000s, Jonna moved to a town in the south of Sweden, where her mother had settled after her divorce from Jonna's father. Despite the separation, Jonna maintained a strong relationship with her father and got along well with her mother's new partner. She would go on to graduate from high school with honors and had dreams of becoming a veterinarian or a doctor. Jonna was also in a good relationship with her long-term boyfriend and had recently moved into her own condo. She was also working as a childcare educator. In the fateful fall of 2013, Jonna was struck with a fierce love for Joenas. She later described him as a drug that she couldn't resist. They began a tumultuous relationship that would last for about a year, with Jonna confessing that she had never been as deeply in love with anyone else. But as with all toxic relationships, trouble was brewing just beneath the surface. Jonna discovered that Jonas was secretly seeing another woman, causing her to spiral into a fit of jealousy and rage. Matters only became more complicated when Jonna found out that she was pregnant with Jonas's child. When he learned of the pregnancy, Jonas demanded that Jonna get an early abortion, claiming that they were too young and financially unstable to raise a child together. Despite Jonna's promises to go through with the abortion, she ultimately couldn't bring herself to do it. Tragically, just a month after discovering her pregnancy, Jonna miscarried the baby. The pain of the loss was compounded by Jonas's callous response to the news. Jonna felt that he didn't seem to care about her at all, and the thought of him being with another woman only added to her heartache. As fate would have it, Jonas reconnected with an old flame named Lovisa during this time. They had a tumultuous history dating back to 2008, when they were both in the 10th grade. However, their relationship had ended permanently a year before Jonas and Jonna met. Jonna was devastated when she found out about Jonas's reconnection with Lovisa and begged him to stop seeing her and communicating with her. Despite Jonas's assurances that he had ended things with Lovisa, Jonna saw her name at the top of his friend list on Snapchat and knew that something was amiss. The frequency of their conversations dwindled, and Jonna came to the realization that their relationship was likely over. In a desperate attempt to move on, Jonna threw herself into the nightlife scene, going to clubs and bars and meeting men through dating apps. But no one seemed to measure up to Jonas in Jonna's eyes. One fateful night, Jonna stumbled upon Jonas and Lovisa at a bar and confronted them. She begged Jonas to choose between them, but he said he couldn't, confessing that he was torn and wanted to keep both women close until he figured things out. Over the next few weeks, Jonna and Lovisa got into numerous arguments at pubs and nightclubs. The last time they saw each other was just a few weeks before the murder. Jonna tried to talk to Jonas, but he always upset her by changing their plans at the last minute. One day, while Jonna was speaking to Jonas and his friends, Lovisa called and joined them. An explosive argument ensued, with Jonna and Lovisa both demanding that Jonas make a choice between them. Jonas, who was drunk, ended up going home with his friends, and Jonna and Lovisa stayed behind to discuss their situation. Jonas told both women that he loved them, and they were both heartbroken but not angry with each other. They even hugged before going their separate ways. However, Jonas called them back for a talk, which didn't resolve anything. After the discussion, Lovisa went home and Jonna stayed with Jonas. This was the night when Jonna told Jonas that she was pregnant. The next day, Jonas informed Jonna that he and Lovisa had talked and wouldn't be seeing each other anymore. But a few days later, Lovisa called Jonas in the middle of the night and he went out to talk to her. Jonna was worried, as she found it difficult to trust him despite his assurances that he wouldn't see Lovisa again. The two continued to visit each other, much to Jonna's dismay. Jonna planned to message Lovisa on Facebook and ask her to leave Jonas alone so they could have a peaceful relationship. But Lovisa never responded to Jonna's messages and instead complained to Jonas about them. Joenas then asked for the keys to his place back, leading Jonna to believe that he wanted the keys so he and Lovisa could spend time together without worrying about Jonna showing up. Jonna gave the keys back and collected her makeup and other valuables, but left some of her belongings at his place. Joenas never officially broke up with Jonna, only telling her that he wanted to be alone for a while. Things took a dark turn on June 14th when Jonna started Googling things like how to kill someone, injecting toxic substances, and suicide post-mortems. In the early morning hours of June 18th, 2014, Jonna stood outside Jonas's apartment, her mind consumed with a twisted plan. She intended to stage the suicide of her love rival, Lovisa, with a single blow to the head from a hammer. Jonna hoped to knock Lovisa out and then inject her with alcohol and sleeping aid. She would then place Lovisa's unconscious body on a train track and leave a bottle of vodka nearby to make it look like a drunken accident. But as Jonna swung the hammer towards the back of Lovisa's head, disaster struck. Rather than passing out, Lovisa let out a blood-curdling scream. The two women fought until Lovisa fell to the ground, and Jonna dragged her into the bathroom. Jonna reached for her knife and plunged it into Lovisa's body over and over again, but Lovisa refused to go quietly. She kept fighting for her life, even as Jonna grabbed a new knife from the kitchen and delivered the fatal blow. Driving the 3 miles back to her own apartment, Jonna picked up a saw and large IKEA bags. On the way back to Jonas's apartment, she was pulled over for speeding, but was soon back on the road with nothing more than a fine. When Jonna returned to the crime scene, she used the saw to slice Lovisa's body into 4 pieces. She placed the remains in the IKEA bags and left them in the trunk of her car. Jonna drove to work as usual. During her shift, Jonas called and asked if she had heard anything from Lovisa. Jonna began to panic and left work early. She would drive north into a forest where she was too exhausted to dig holes for the bags of dismembered body parts. Instead, she placed them by a tree and covered them with leaves and twigs. When Jonna returned home, she called her sister and told her that she had gone to Jonas's place to pick up her belongings, but had to stab Lovisa in self-defense when Lovisa started attacking her. Jonna claimed that she left, but later returned to check on Lovisa only to find the apartment empty. Jonna's sister urged her to call the police and tell them the truth. Jonna called the police, who arrived at around 9 p.m. and began questioning her about what had really happened. Jonna stuck to the same story she had told her sister, that she had gotten into a fight with Lovisa and stabbed her in self-defense. The police accepted this story until they asked Jonna how she got into the apartment. Jonna became extremely tense and couldn't easily answer their questions. The police yelled at Jonna, telling her that she must be honest with them. This was the final straw for Jonna, who broke down and told the police the truth about how she had killed Lovisa and dismembered her body. On the early morning of the next day, at 12:36 p.m., a police dog found the remains of Lovisa in the forest. A police officer noted that a hand was sticking out of a pile of leaves. An investigation was conducted at the crime scene, and the remains were taken for further examination. The police initially arrested 3 individuals on suspicion of murder: Jonna, Joenas, and another man. Jonas's apartment was also searched for forensic evidence. The police had a confession, but needed to find the evidence to arrest Jonna. A few days later, Jonas was cleared as a suspect because there was no evidence of his involvement in the murder, and he was released. On June 21st, it was reported that Jonna would be rearrested for murder after confessing. The next day, the police recovered the murder weapons. On June 26th, it was revealed that Jonna had called a male friend of hers who was detained in custody, asking for help disposing of the body, but he had refused to assist her. It was also revealed that after Jonna had killed Lovisa and Lovisa had died, Jonna had tried to inject vodka into her veins to make it appear as though she was drunk at the time of death. On July 7th, the man who was detained in custody was released and was no longer a suspect. The police investigation was focusing on indicting Jonna. In mid-July, Jonna underwent a psychological evaluation to determine if she was mentally competent at the time of the murder. The evaluation was a comprehensive assessment, and the results were released on September 8th. The results showed that Jonna was not experiencing any abnormal behavior or turmoil at the time of the murder, meaning that she would be held in jail, as it was determined that she did not have any mental problems at the time of the crime. On November 19, 2014, the extensive injuries sustained by Lovisa were presented in court. Lovisa had suffered 6 injuries to the back of her head, causing significant damage to soft tissue, as well as a fracture at the top and base of her skull. She also had 17 distinct cuts on her neck, lower face, throat, and the back of her right hand, all causing damage to soft tissue. In addition, her windpipe was damaged and she was missing teeth. According to a statement from a neighbor, the attack on Lovisa lasted a long time, with the first blow to the back of her head leading to the final deadly cut. This suggests that Lovisa would have been in immense pain and suffering for an extended period of time before her death. The neighbor remembers hearing her shout as a constant thunder. It was also revealed that Jonna may have been inspired by a scene in the show Dexter. The preliminary hearing for Jonna began on December 2, 2014. Jonna's defense argued that she never intended to kill Lovisa, only to scare her. The court ultimately decided on the maximum life sentence for the ruthless murder of Lovisa due to the severity of the suffering she experienced in her final moments. On December 19, 2014, 25-year-old Jonna Henningsson was sentenced to 16 years in prison for the ruthless murder of Lovisa, as well as for burglary.